There's a ton of postseason and DFS action to take part in with the divisional playoffs. So, which tight ends should you look to start and sit? SI's fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano is here with that insight. Fabs, we've got 8 teams, 4 games, and 2 days of action. So, let's talk about the tight ends to start.
And let's start off with Austin Hooper. I liked him last week. He has played very well, 30 combined plus fantasy points in his last 2 games, both ironically against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's got Kansas City this week. They've given up 9 touchdowns and the 6th most fantasy points to tight end. So Hooper should be a popular target for Baker Mayfield. I also like Jared Cook this week. He only scored 8 fantasy points last week against the Bears, but he was targeted 7 times. And in his previous 5 games, he scored 11 plus fantasy points 4 times. Tampa Bay's defense has given up 9 touchdowns and the 10th most fantasy points to tight ends. And Cook also beat them for 13 points back in week 1. So Jared Cook is a nice option this week.
So we want to get Hooper and Cook into our lineups, but let's talk about the tight ends just better off left on your bench.
Yeah, I'm not feeling Rob Gronkowski this weekend. Kaitlin last week did not score a single fantasy point, only had 1 target. And the matchup this week's not great against New Orleans. They've allowed 3 touchdowns and the 7th fewest fantasy points to tight end since week 9. And their defense held Gronkowski to a combined 3 catches, 13 yards, and 4.3 fantasy points in 2 regular season meetings. So Gronk should be on your bench. And this one's a bit chalk, but Tyler Higbee, his 2020 season was disappointing. Well, in 2021, his first game, 1.4 fantasy points. The Packers defense has given up 5 touchdowns and the 3rd fewest fantasy points to tight ends, and just 2 have scored more than 12 points against them. So keep Higbee and a lot of your Rams pass catchers on the bench this weekend.
It is still hard to imagine benching Gronk in a playoff game, but Fabs, I gotta give it to you. It makes sense. Appreciate your insight. Guys, at home for more insight and, of course, Sports Illustrated's award-winning weekly player rankings, you guys can get your membership to SI Fantasy Plus for just $14.99 a month.